Rowan used to say that their marriage was a suitcase they packed together, light enough to carry, heavy enough to matter. For 6, maybe 7 years, he and Tessa had been the kind of couple that made friends believe in the quiet version of love. No fireworks, no dramatic vows, just a rhythm. 2 trips a year, weekend pancakes, shared notes on the fridge. When strangers asked why they didn't have kids yet, they smiled the way people smile at chewed gum on the sidewalk. It wasn't anyone's business. They were still exploring, still traveling, still learning the geography of one another. It was early spring when the first refusal arrived. They had planned a short coastal loop, nothing far, a few hours from home. A trail he'd wanted to hike at sunrise. A diner she liked for its pancakes the size of records. Tessa pressed her fingers to her temples that morning, blinking at the light as if it had betrayed her. "I don't feel well," she said, voice papery. "Not up for it this time." "You should go. You've been looking forward to it." Rowan paused. "We can push it a week." She shook her head. "You already booked. Go. Bring me photos." "I'll live through your messages." He kissed her forehead. It was warm, but not fever warm. Concern brushed him and left. He told himself not to dramatize the ordinary. People get headaches, people cancel trips. It happens. So he went. The coast was exactly the kind of ordinary miracle he loved. Gulls scissoring the sky, a horizon that refused to be anything but honest, wind that kept turning thoughts inside out until they were true. On the second afternoon, he ducked into a small bookstore to escape a burst of rain. It smelled like paper and old coffee and patience. He stood in front of the travel section, fingers grazing spines, when a woman's voice beside him said, "That one is all photos and no soul." He turned, brown hair pulled back, a road-worn jacket, eyes that looked like she'd noticed things and learned to be kind about them. "Eliza," she said, offering her hand. "I live nearby. I eavesdrop on travel books like other people eavesdrop on arguments." "Rowan," he smiled. "I'm just visiting. My wife," he heard himself emphasize it, "couldn't come." "Sorry to hear that," Eliza said, meaning it. "Then you'll need a better book." She pulled another from the shelf and held it out. "This one knows where the locals hide the good soup." They talked. All right. They talked longer than strangers do. About the best ways to lose your way on purpose. About the difference between a place and a picture of a place. He learned she led walking tours part-time, tended bar the rest, and had a habit of taking the long way home. She learned he collected roadside postcards and never drank coffee after 2 p.m. When they parted under a shy strip of sun, he felt the familiar lift of meeting an ally in the wild. He texted Tessa a photo of the harbor and wrote, "Wish you were here." She replied with a heart and a next time. They crossed paths again the next day at the harbor cafe. "You again," Eliza smiled like an unthreatening déjà vu. He made it plain. He was married. He was just passing through. He liked talking about maps. She didn't flinch or edge toward anything dangerous. They were careful the way good people are when they know cliffs exist. They finished their coffees, recommended soups and trails, and parted. He bought the book she suggested and scribbled her soup place in the margins. Ask for the tomato basil. Back home, he told Tessa about the trails and the gulls and the pancakes at the diner. Not about the woman at the bookstore. Because nothing had happened. Because it felt like mentioning a harmless cloud when you're listing trees. He sent Eliza one message the following week. "Thanks again for the book rec." She replied 2 days later with a photo of a chalkboard menu, tomato basil back on. The messages were rare, polite, mostly about weather that either cooperated or didn't. If a thread was being woven, it was thin and far from their daily table. Summer ambled closer. They planned another trip. Lake cabins, star watching, kayaks he had researched half to death. 2 nights before they were to leave, Tessa rubbed her arms the way she did when she was thinking hard. "Rowan," she said carefully, "I'm not feeling up for travel again. It's this heaviness. I don't know how to explain it." He nodded, but something inside him sat up. He couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way her voice curved away from his eyes. Maybe it was the new habit of her checking her phone and setting it down like a hot stone. He told himself it was still none of his business to invent reasons. "I can cancel," he said. "No," she insisted, almost too quickly. "You've been excited for weeks. Go, please." He packed. He stared at the bag. He unpacked. He paced the living room, a caged animal of reason. The morning of the trip, he drove 2 hours, the highway ribboning ahead, the radio too cheerful. Then, somewhere between mile markers and second thoughts, he exited. He sat in a gas station parking lot smelling like oil and rain, and stared at his hands as if they might confess for him. It was not a plan so much as an ache that wanted a face. He texted Eliza, "Passing through your town. If you're around, would be good to say hello." He told himself it was conversation he missed, the kind where people talk about maps and soup and mean it. He turned the car toward the coast, not because it was right, but because something in him was tired of pretending there wasn't a question. Eliza met him near the harbor, the wind doing the small talk. "You look like a man who thinks for sport," she said gently. "Everything okay?" "I don't know," he admitted. And that, more than anything, felt like betrayal. To admit aloud he didn't know the marriage he'd defended with whole paragraphs. They walked. They didn't confess. They talked about gulls and the poetry of street names and the way grief makes time elastic. But when they sat on the seawall, the tide kept speaking in one language, in and out, in and out. He told her about the second trip canceled, about the heaviness that had no doctor. She listened, then said softly, "Sometimes the body tells the truth before the mouth is brave enough." They looked at each other too long. The air between them had weight now, a gravity that noticed itself. Eliza was not a danger in a red dress. She was a warmth in a gray jacket, the kind of person who made silence feel like company. He thought of Tessa's hand on his back, guiding him through crowded markets, of the hotel notepads they always stole. He thought of promises not as laws but as ropes, sturdy because they're held, not because they're tied. "I'm married," he said again, as if words could fence a cliff. "I know," Eliza said, but her face had that vulnerable, borderless look people get when they're about to tell the truth. "I don't want to be your excuse for anything." "Then why am I here?" he asked. "Maybe to hear yourself say out loud what you've known in your chest for a while," she said. "That something's changed, and pretending doesn't save anyone." He laughed, a broken thing. "I used to think the worst thing that could happen to a promise was breaking it. Now I think it might be letting it go numb." That night, they kissed like people who knew a wall had fallen even before anyone said the word. It wasn't fever. There were too many pauses, too many sentences with trembling ends. It was tenderness riddled with apology, the look back even while you're walking forward. They stopped, started, stopped again. He called a hotel and slept alone. In the morning, he drank coffee that tasted like a moral he didn't want, and drove home. Tessa was in the kitchen, hair tied up, a bowl of late peaches on the counter. She looked at him the way people look at a weather report, with hope, with dread, with a plan to carry an umbrella. "How was it?" she asked. "Not the trip. Him." He set his keys down. The house hummed with the ordinary. Fridge, pipes, a neighbor mowing. He felt suddenly as fragile as anything made by hand. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to ask me something back." She folded dish towels into squares, the domestic courage of people who do hard things with small motions. "Okay. Why did you want me to go alone?" he asked. "Twice." She took a breath that sounded like confession walking up the stairs. "Because I wasn't going to be alone," she said quietly. "I told you I felt sick, I did. Sick with wanting something I shouldn't." He closed his eyes. That sentence was a room with a trapdoor and no instructions. He nodded once, twice, as if counting. "How long?" "A few months," she said. "We met at the gym. It felt stupid and harmless until it didn't." She looked up, tears sharp. "I don't want to defend it. I don't want to explain it away. I wanted attention that knew my name. I wanted to flirt with the idea that I could be someone else. It makes me sound like a child." He leaned against the counter. "And when I left, I used the time," she said. Honesty had a sound. It was quieter than lies, but stronger. "I told myself you loved your independence, that we'd be fine, that it was just a phase. I told myself I was protecting you from worry. I told myself so many things that I can't hear straight anymore." He nodded again, staring at the bowl of peaches as if they might explain their softness. "I met someone," he said. The truth cost him air. "On the first trip, just as a stranger in a bookstore. We were careful. I was careful. I kept it in the drawer with the postcards. On the second, I went to see her. We kissed. I didn't sleep with her." It felt like a confession to gravity. Tessa wiped her face with the heel of her hand, a gesture he knew from years of movies and colds and long flights. "I'm oddly relieved you're not perfect," she said hoarsely. "It makes me less monstrous alone." She exhaled, then found the worst kindness. "And part of me is glad you have someone to talk to, if not me. Maybe it means you won't hate me with every breath." He almost laughed and then didn't. Hate would be easier than this. They sat at the table, not touching, not performing punishment or pardon. Just two people trapped under a sky they had summoned. Finally, Tessa said, "When did we stop telling each other the first draft of our thoughts?" "When we started editing for Mercy," he said. "We were trying not to hurt each other. We forgot that pain doesn't disappear. It migrates." They tried therapy. They tried silence. They tried dividing their life by seasons and sharing custody of the friends. On Tuesdays, they cooked together without speaking about what they were. On Friday, she stayed late at yoga, the word cracking like ice in spring. He saw Eliza twice more, both times in public places, both times with the gravity of two people holding a live wire. They talked about ethics like weather, unavoidable, affecting, not personal until it is. Eliza refused to be a secret. "Decide," she said gently. "Not for me. For truth." He hated that word and then learned to love it. It was the only thing that kept him from dissolving in the solvent of excuses. Tessa, for her part, ended the affair before it moved into the apartment of her ordinary life. "I can't split into versions," she said, and meant it. She cried more then than when it began. There is a phase in grief, no one names it properly, where you keep expecting the door to teach you which way to open. "Push! Pull!" They pushed and pulled and wrote lists and slept apart and together and apart again. They gave each other books about devotion and about rupture and about the mathematics of staying. Some mornings they jogged side by side like partners. Some nights their backs were continents. In November, they sat on a bench by the river, breath visible, a pair of scarecrows with better shoes. "What do you want?" he asked, knowing the cruelty of the question. "A life I recognize," she whispered. "But maybe that's not the same as the life I had." "What do you want with me?" he asked, even crueler. She didn't answer for a long time. "To stop being a version," she said finally. To be the woman who picks her person and then keeps choosing. I failed that test. I want to take it again. With you. She looked at him. What do you want? He stared at the water, tilting it silver. He thought of Eliza's eyes, honest and kind. Of the bookstore that smelled like patience. He thought of the first years with Tessa, when they stole hotel pens and planned futures from the backs of receipts. He thought of the kiss like a fault line and the peaches like a parable. I want a marriage I can look in the eyes, he said. That means no shadows. No travel alone into the kind of silence that becomes a second life, she nodded. Then we have to choose rules we actually believe in. Not the ones that make us look good from the outside. They drew them up like a treaty. Imperfect, human, hopeful. If you're lonely, say it before you become someone else's headline. If you meet a person who lights your thoughts, introduce them to the daylight of our conversation. If a trip is planned, we go or we cancel together. No noble sacrifices that hide opportunities for harm. If you feel numb, shake me awake. If I want to be adored, I ask you first. They did not sign it with blood. They signed it with the mundanity of showing up. He deleted Eliza's number after a last message that blessed and ended. Thank you for not letting my presence be your lie. She replied with a single sentence he would carry like a smooth stone. Choose what you can love out loud. Tessa deleted the photos she had not looked at and returned the necklace she had not worn in public. It was less a moral victory than a cleaning of the house before winter. Months became a path with fewer sharp stones. There were relapses into silence and small braveries of speech. They took short trips within an hour of home, on purpose. They learned to narrate the weather of their hearts, with the urgency of storm warnings. They fought more honestly. They apologized faster. They laughed in the aisle of a grocery store once like idiots and didn't care who saw. On the anniversary of a year they nearly didn't reach, Tessa left a note on the fridge in their old tradition. 2 trips a year sounds ambitious. How about one deeply honest one? He found her on the porch, 2 mugs of tea cooling, the map between them blank. Where? He asked. Somewhere we can be the same people in public that we are in private, she said. I hear that's less about place and more about practice. He took her hand. It wasn't triumphant. It was the humble kind of victory that looks like choosing the same person on a Tuesday. Then let's practice. They drove to the coast. The bookstore was still there, patient as ever. Rowan walked past the travel section without stopping. He did not look for Eliza, but he felt grateful to the ache that had demanded a face. It had forced him to grow a spine for truth. Tessa bought a book about lighthouses and underlined a sentence. They stand where shipwrecks taught them humility. He underlined it too. That night, watching the horizon invent colors, they spoke in the grammar of people who have learned to conjugate honesty. I'm happy, she said, and I'm also sad for the people we hurt. Me too, he said. I forgive you, she added, and I'm still forgiving you. Me too, he said again. The tide came in and out, as if to remind them that all keeping is a rhythm. Years later, when friends whispered confessions over late dinners, someone texting someone, a heart wandering like a dog without a collar, Rowan didn't perform wisdom. He told the truth, that nothing glamorous waits on the other side of a broken promise, only mirrors. That if you want out, the bravest door is honesty, not sabotage. That 2 trips a year won't save you if you travel alone inside your head. That sometimes love is not fireworks, but the practice of waiting for the other to tell you the first draft before they edit for mercy. They didn't call their marriage perfect. They called it practiced. They called it chosen. They called it the suitcase they still packed together. Lighter now, because truth weighs less than pretending, and heavy enough to matter.